The topic of my conference presentation gives an insight into the concept of connectivism in adult education. Let me start with the outline of the presentation. I will first explain and define the key concept that is connectivism. I will give you some background information. Then I will move on to the basic adult learning theories of Knowles, Frere and Mezirow. I will make a brief reference to the founder of connectivism and the 8 principles of connectivism, how connectivism differs and why it is a top learning model, especially for the digital age, and how connectivism can be applied in institutions. I will finish with my concluding remarks and very important future education trends. Connectivism has been defined as the view that knowledge and cognition are distributed across networks of people and technology, and learning is the process of connecting, growing, and navigating those networks. The founder of connectivism is George Siemens. In connectivism, the main concept is that of network, and this is how the learning process is explained, as it consists of 2 elements, the nodes and connections. A node could be our thoughts, feelings, or social interaction and data, and the link between these nodes is called a connection. In order to fully conceptualize the term connectivism, another term is vital, that of exponentiality, because knowledge is growing exponentially. There is a reference to the half-life of knowledge, which has been defined as the time span from when knowledge is gained to when it becomes obsolete. Siemens said that the amount of knowledge in the world has doubled and is doubling actually every 18 months, according to the American Society of Training and Documentation. And Gonzalez stated that knowledge mustn't be measured in years, but in months. The graph in this slide is a visual representation of a comparison between exponential and linear growth. The light blue line represents the exponential growth, and this line is much higher than the purple line that represents the linear growth. The 3 verbs that play a domineering role in connectivism and could be considered to be an axiom is those of learning, unlearning, and relearning information quickly. Learning is related to the ability to discover anything unknown. Unlearning is rejection of information that once was held to be true after being critically analyzed in the presence of new information, and relearning is actually the arriving at a new understanding. Let me refer to the first 4 principles of connectivism. Number 1, learning rests in a wide range of opinions. Number 2, learning is a process of synthesizing information resources. Number 3, learning may reside in artificial intelligence. Number 4, the ability to know and be in a position to apply a wealth of information is more important than what is currently known. The 5th principle of connectivism is related to the maintenance of connections, which is very important in order to ensure continual learning. Number 6, connectivism is the ability to see connections between different ideas and concepts. Number 7, not just knowing something, but up-to-date knowledge is the purpose of all connectivist learning activities. And the last one, incoming information can be a changing reality, because what we may know now, it might be the wrong answer tomorrow. Moving on to the basic adult learning theories, the first theory is that of Malcolm Knowles, andragogy. And in andragogy, the internal motivation is a very important term. Another term is that of a priori knowledge that plays a fundamental role for the acquisition of new knowledge. Collaborative learning is also emphasized, and the adults are seen as self-directed learners as they are the ones that are responsible for their own learning. The second basic adult learning theory is Freire's social change. In this theory, resistance to various forms of power and control are very important. Motivation is also essential, but not internal motivation, but rather external motivation. Two similarities is that pre-existing knowledge is also a background to the acquisition of new, as well as collaborative learning. But disagreement is also an essential part in the process of discovering new knowledge, as it can act as a stimulus for further growth and development. The last basic adult learning theory is Mesiro's transformative learning. In this theory, the psychological dimension is foregrounded. The external motivation also plays a dominant role, and the same applies to collaborative learning. But there is reference to conflict with the old mentality, because it can trigger the desired result of transformation. There is also reference to the idea of changing perspective in terms of psychological, ethical, and behavioral changes. The role of the student here changes as from a self-directed learner becomes a co-shaper of the learning environment as the teacher remains in the forefront. After discussing these three basic adult learning theories, the big question that can be posed is how connectivism differs and why is it considered to be a top learning model? Well, for Simmons, these theories focus solely on just a monodimensional interpretation of learning. They see knowledge as a static feature that it is there to be learned and just be transmitted. They actually do not emphasize the skill of synthesizing the data. The role of connectivism is to view learning as a process, not just a simple process, but a process of making connections. Learning, therefore, is not only cognitive or not only social or a biological process, but knowledge is everywhere. In the digital world, the people rely on storage and retrieval learning. It is a cyclic process, a blending of other ideas. What follows a theoretical perspective can also have a very practical perspective. So in this table, in this slide, the educational technology dimensions can be visualized, and they can play the role of suggestions for adult university and advanced EFL learners. So for the principles of diversity of opinions and connection of data, or a web-based curriculum, or an up-to-date knowledge, activities that could be given to our learners would be Wikipedia articles, and especially the evaluation of the reliability of crowdsourced information, the links of a Wikipedia article, the so-called Wiki project article quality. What can also be followed is online argumentation, collaborative writing in class, that students can develop their ownership by consulting writing applications which can give instant feedback. The term flipped classroom can actually be called online flipped classroom approach via YouTube videos. And then the last possible activity would be reference to electronic databases, because they are online libraries that provide a wealth of information, and actually the latest articles that can be provided to learners can help them develop their research skills, which are considered to be 21st century skills. I have incorporated some screenshots in order to show you how connectivism can be applied in the classroom. In screenshot number 1, students can select a Wikipedia article, and then they can move on to the talk section and make their improvements or have a discussion about these improvements with their classmates. In screenshot number 2, you can see the text diver application that can give instant feedback in advanced writing. Students insert their text, and then they can have a lexical measurement help, where you can see the terms of lexical diversity, lexical density in percentages, and sentence spread appear. Screenshot number 3 shows the Kiel online argumentation. The topic is a controversial one. If it is wrong to lock down for COVID-19, that's why you see 2 columns, the pros column and the cons column. You can also see external links that can be inserted. Above the topic, there is the interaction tree, which displays the best answer being voted for. Screenshot 4 shows the Google documents for collaborative writing. The teacher has chosen the topic of human rights to be used as a whole class discussion. You can see on the left the contributions of almost all the students, as well as their comments, the teachers and the students' comments, to make a more interactive classroom. In this screenshot, the online flipped classroom via YouTube video is another important activity. Students can either be asked to watch at home an online lecture and then present the summary of the lecture in a virtual classroom, or they can be asked to watch at home a TEDx talk and then to be asked questions in this virtual environment. The last screenshot shows the ERIC database, which gives students a plethora of current online journal articles. And of course, these articles are peer-reviewed. There is this alternative. And you can see how enriching that can be for a synthesis of resources as connectivism dictates. Now let's proceed to the bottom line and the question of what is the future of education after all? Epitomizing connectivism, we could say that when it comes to technology, many important questions are raised because theorists never cease to evolve theories as conditions change at all times. And these conditions have changed us so significantly that there is no point in talking about modification anymore. So an entirely innovative approach is necessary. Connectivism is realizing that complete knowledge cannot only exist in the mind of a single person. And especially in this jungle of information that we live in and we are bombarded with continual information, we need to have an exponential mindset. According to Siemens, connectivism acknowledges the tectonic shifts in society where learning is no longer an internal individualistic activity. Speaking of education trends, we can focus on the following trends. We can talk about student ownership as students become more and more autonomous. We can talk about a shift from knowing to being, as epistemological knowledge is not so much prioritized as opposed to the ontological identity, because there is a focus on learner skills and qualities. We can see a democratization of education as there is free universal access to data and users can be called prosumers, a synthesis between consuming and producing. The externalized generation is another trend as technology gives birth to an online identity and users can externalize their thoughts through the social media. Lastly, we can talk about nowness and immediacy because it's very important to know what happened 5 minutes ago rather than what happened yesterday. We should also bear in mind that change is not becoming, according to Baudrillard 2002. And the implicature here is that changing is unstable and becoming is static. Nothing can be static and change is the only constant. It's like a permanent state of change. So all these educational change pressures are well beyond our control. Perhaps we can dream of staticity when it comes to the becoming of the internet, because according to Bill Gates, the internet is becoming the town square for the global village of tomorrow. These are the references for my presentation. Thank you for listening.